We are highlighting one of our programs this evening for music business. With us, we have joining Rachel Hanuso. We also have Serona Elton, and we also have Ray Sanchez. So we are excited to be speaking with you this evening, and we'll be able to answer all of your questions and go over just a ton of information for you about the program. Just want to make sure, just to get us kicked off, to let you know that our information session will just be right around 45 minutes, may go slightly less than that. And for anybody that does have to drop off a little bit sooner, not a problem. We will be able to get a recording out to you after the close of the session here. And as well, for anyone that does have questions, we have a Q&A feature. So if you do think of anything along the way, please go ahead and chat that in, and we'll be able to address that during our time this evening. As I mentioned to you, I am an enrollment advisor and want to make sure that you're able to reach out to myself and to our team and our other enrollment advisors. You can see on the screen here our contact information there, 800-411-2290. We also have a live chat option. If you're not able to give us a call, that's just fine. That website there is uonline.miami.edu. And again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and get it kicked off to our panelists here, Rachel, Ray, and Serona. You can go ahead and introduce yourselves, and in any order is just fine. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. My name is Rachel Hanusa. I'm the director of Frost Online, and I'm here with Ray Sanchez, Associate Dean for Strategic Initiatives and Innovation, and also a professor in the music industry program and chair of the department. And here with Serona Elton, who is also an Associate Dean of Administration in the Frost School and Director of the Music Industry Program and Professor in the program. So many titles for both of them. But I'm going to start out by asking them a question which will also introduce themselves. So I'll start with Serona. Can you tell us a bit about your role within the University of Miami and how you interact with online Master of Music Industry students?
Sure. Hi, and I hope my internet's acting a little crazy. So if it gets really choppy, I'm ready to switch to my phone internet. So so bear with me if I do break up a little bit. So nice to meet you all. I do direct the music industry program, and I'm also a professor in the program. So the way students in the online program would be interacting with me is they might be taking one of my courses. I generally teach the music contracts course and a course about the recorded music industry. And they also are likely to interact with me on different kinds of guest speaker events and different things that we have for all of our music industry students online and on campus. There's a lot of communications we send out about opportunities that our students have, whatever that may be. And often those come from me as the director of the program. So those are really the main ways that potential students might interact with me with respect to this.
Great, thank you. Ray, same question for you. Tell us about your role within University of Miami and how you interact with online music industry students.
Right, thanks, Rachel. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm in the same boat as Serona. I'm in the mountains of Colorado right now, and internet's been a little funky, and it's 58 degrees outside right now, so it's kind of,
Nice.
That part's nice. Very much along the lines of what Professor Elton said. I'm a professor in the program, also chair of the department, but you wouldn't be interacting with me either in my dean role or chair role, but really as a professor. I teach two courses, the music copyright law course and the entrepreneurship for musicians course. Always interact with students inside those courses. And then also, I tend to go to some events around the country, as a lot of our professors will often do. And we try to make informal opportunities to get together. For instance, I go to the NAMM show in LA every year, as long as there's not COVID going on. And they're going to be having that this year. So we routinely meet up with students and current and former, because a big part of of our program is the connections that you can make. You have the opportunity to make across not just your current classmates, but prior classes that are folks already working in the industry. And we have a pretty active LinkedIn group for music industry, and a very, I'd say, a very passionate alumni base.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to jump into some more specific questions about the program. We'll start with Sharona. How is the curriculum for the online Masters in Music Industry designed? What are some of the key skills and learnings that this program focuses on?
Got it. So, both our online degree and our on-campus degree have the same curriculum, and ultimately, it's deeply rooted in the foundations of the industry. Which, as much as the industry changes, those foundations don't change, and that's to say that so much of the music industry, particularly when you're talking about those having to do with songs and recordings, has deep roots in music copyright law. It sort of underpins how everything works. And so from a curriculum point of view, all of the students start off right away taking music copyright, because you really kind of have to understand those concepts and then build on them. And then you learn about some other core parts of the industry that you have to know. How does the song side of the business work? We call that music publishing. And how does the recording side of the business work? We call that recorded music operations usually. And so sort of the core courses that students take are this music copyright class, music publishing, and recorded music operations. And they add then on top of that with lots of other things that, are both kind of core to understanding how things work and speak to their own passions. So some students might be, lean a bit more towards the legal side of things, not to be lawyers. There's a ton of, I'll call it quasi-legal stuff that happens in the industry. And so taking classes about like music licensing, for example, really helps you understand how all that works. And there's also like a class in music marketing, for example, which is, something that somebody might be interested in both of those, or maybe one or the other. And so there's a core, and then there's an elective base you add on top of that. So you've got your core, publishing, records, copyright. You have additional kinds of topics in the music industry, marketing, licensing, music placement, advanced topics. There's a whole bunch of different sorts of things that you might take. And then there's the electives, right? That are broader electives. And those come from our live entertainment management program. There's a range of other classes that we offer online as well that are more, broad electives. They're not unique specifically to the music industry in terms of, they have a broader scope that they cover. And so that's kind of the way we think of it, is it's a core, you expand to electives within the discipline, and then you expand a little bit more beyond that.
Great, thank you. Ray, I'm gonna ask you a different question. What do you feel are some of the biggest challenges facing the music industry in the next 5 years? And how does this program help prepare graduates to overcome some of these challenges?
Right. Let me highlight a very, very important point that Sharona made here, and that is that from the beginning, and when I say from the beginning, we literally started music industry education back in the mid-'60s. The focus was and will continue to be on the fundamentals that without which there is no industry. And even though the expression of those fundamentals may be different at different times, streaming versus CDs versus vinyl. I understand from some of my students that cassettes are making a comeback now. Interesting. I don't know where they're going to play them, but anyway, but those fundamentals are very, very important. So yes, there are absolute challenges in the industry. There always have been. And some of those can't really be fully addressed until there are fundamental changes in the laws that govern things, and also changes in business practices, and the way certain things are done. Now, that second part is in constant flux, but the law isn't, and the law is really slow. So but the amazing thing is that this industry is extremely resilient. The fact that starting about 20 years ago, started on a very serious downslope. I'm here in Colorado actually working with 4 different bands that are all jazz oriented. These are people that actually want to go out there and make it, and they were picked specifically for this thing. And they have all these same questions. And I was sharing with them a graphic, the way the industry has gone. It took a big dip because downloading was taking away all the revenue from physical products and whatnot. But you look at the last couple of years, we're back and then some. It's actually picked up ahead of steam. So now the challenges are going to be more nuanced. Like more important, I think the most important challenge is how to pay the right money to the right people, and that begins at the beginning of the chain when you first write something, when you first produce something, that you do everything correctly at that moment. So again, making focusing on that, and then understanding practices that go on every day in the business, are really the foundations of our program. I actually think probably the single biggest challenge is going to be that the impact of technology on copyright. The faculty in our program are all from very, very different backgrounds, and mine is very much the creative. I'm a producer. I come from that side. Publishing, I have a lot of experience in publishing, including print, which is a very niche-y little thing. But I have been working with technology that actually creates music for me, that I'm actually becoming more of a curator, more of a decider, as opposed to direct. Now, knowing what I know about copyright, because I teach copyright, and these are plugins that are $50 out there, and these companies, they all have these little. I'm always careful to look at those little clauses, and sure enough, they just say, yeah, as long as you're not actually copying our software, everything that comes out of it is yours. Of course it is. But boy, that's interesting, because what happens if 2 big hit songs, that algorithm comes up with something very similar for both, and they come up kind of at the same time, and there's nobody copied anybody. It just happened. That'll make
artificial intelligence creating
that's
music.
Right.
It's
exactly, and
that's going to be a
challenge. I think
it will be absolutely.
Yeah.
AI created music and data. I mean, how data gets used, how creators get to understand the importance of something called metadata, basically all their information about them and their contribution to the recording or the song. All that has everything to do with how they get paid. So much of what I think the next 5 years, we're going to see is all the questions that come up based on AI created music and metadata and things like that. I couldn't agree more with Ray.
Yeah. So I think that's the touch point of where the intersection of the creativity and the technology happen. That's going to be where the challenges are also going to happen, and the law is very slow. But we'll get there. Yep.
Thank you.
Maybe some of our alums will inform that conversation.
And part of what's interesting about the law is because it's intended to be written broadly enough that it can apply to continually evolving business situations. What we end up with are real questions about how do you take a new piece of technology and fit it into the existing legal paradigm? Like, do you really need to change the law, or is the law already written in a way that we just need to figure out how it would be applied to this circumstance? And that's the kind of stuff that, you get into in our music copyright class or other classes. Like, this is what the law says. So how does this new thing fit or not fit? What does that mean?
Right.
Thank you. It sounds like a topic we could spend the entire session
discussing. We sure could.
Days on.
Yep.
Well, let me move on to another one, just talking about our alumni network. Ray, how valuable are UM Fest alumni networks and strong relationships within the music industry? And how do
Enormous.
they benefit students and graduates of the program?
Well, so, I just told students here today, the difference between industry and business, right? So the industry is this whole ecosystem and all the people and the companies and how they all fit together and whatnot. The business is the relationships between the people and the entities in this ecosystem. And there is no substitute for those relationships. And that is 100% about networking. When you, like I said, we were the first program ever. Our own network of our alums is very, very deep and very wide. Every single, I don't know of a corner of this industry where there's not one of our alums, including in foreign countries and all over the place. My approach. So here's the thing. Here's what I won't do in class. I won't say, "Hey, call so and so at so and so, and they'll hook you up." Okay, that's not beneficial. And what is good is I can say, "Hey, so and so happens to be the director of finance at such and such company." Well, actually, no, I might say something like, one of our alums is the director of finance at such and such a company. You take the time to figure out, number one, who that is. It's very easy. Look, a simple LinkedIn search will reveal any of our alumni network, on LinkedIn. But then it's up to the student to reach out, make the connection, be polite, but politely aggressive. You have to be assertive in a good way. But I don't believe in the shotgun approach. I also, don't believe in just saying, "Hey, here's an internship for you. Go do it." Because I know very much how this business works, and it rewards people that are proactive and take the time to understand the nature of that company or that situation and reach out in a professional way. That's why it's so important to go beyond the classroom, to go to these special events that we may offer online, and very important, to go to the events nationally where the industry is, Music Biz in May, NAM in January, on and on. Any of the Billboard conferences. You have to be out there and network, and you will find our alums kind of coming out of the woodwork. They're there, but you take the time.
And there's your first name, and you go, "Hey, I am a fellow Hurricane," and there's
that's
your.
Right.
I mean, that's the opening.
Yeah.
It's always that awkward thing to walk up to somebody, and you're like, "What's the first thing that should come out of my mouth? Why are they going to stop and talk to me?" And there it is.
Yes.
"Hey, I'm a fellow Hurricane coming out of the University of Miami Music Industry Program," and usually the reaction you get is, "Oh, great, awesome, great to meet you," and then it goes from there, right? So that's the value of that network. Is it is the starter of that conversation. It's the first sentence of that email communication or that message on LinkedIn is, "Hey, reaching out to a fellow Hurricane," and I every time I've ever heard of anybody ever doing that, the response is always, "Great to meet you. How can I help you?"
Great, thank you. Another question, Sir, and I'll direct this to you. Our faculty have real-world experience in the music industry. Can you describe how this impacts the curriculum and why this is an important component of the program?
Yeah, this is not a theory of music industry, right? This is a very practical degree. It's really about preparing you to get into the field right now, and this is a fast changing industry. And it's funny. I certainly wouldn't want to knock any colleagues, but I don't know how often debits and credits change, right? In accounting, so some things are not a fast moving, it's always changing field. And that's what makes this an exciting field. But it also means that if you don't have faculty who are not closely, following and involved in the things that are changing in the industry very quickly, what they're explaining to you just is out of date. And so I think having people who have been doing the work for a very long time, they've got a lot of deep knowledge and context about like, how did we get here? What's at the core of this, not just how to do something, but why is it even done that way? I think that speaks to the history of the faculty, but the fact that we're all still very heavily involved in different parts of the industry speaks to our ability to keep current on what's happening. So I think you really need those two things. Some disciplines you can get faculty who got their doctorate a zillion years ago, and mostly they do research that's published in journals that are read by other academics. That happens in a lot of academia. That's not the case in this kind of program.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. We are not a music industry studies program.
Right.
This is actually exactly a professional degree. So think any other professional degree, this is that as well.
Right. Well, Ray, what do you feel distinguishes a Frost graduate from the music industry program from other institutions that might offer similar degrees?
Right. Okay. So there are other very good schools out there. It cannot be denied. And look carefully at every one of those programs and see where many of those professors went to school. And here we are, because it's funny but true. But I think a distinguishing feature of our program, in large part, is the size. We are smaller than most other programs. It's in some ways we do things a little harder, in a harder way than others because of the nature of our program itself. It's not a cookie cutter situation. So things are changing constantly in this business. We have professors that are very much on top of everything and involved in every aspect. There is no one that teaches in our program that does not have deep professional experience. There are no academics teaching in our program, and that's not knocking anybody else. And there are people, and I have colleagues in other institutions that are pure researchers, and they bring some really important things to the table as well. But we decided very early on, before any of us were here, this program existed, and the decision was made that it would always be a professional program, not an academic program. And so that's the big part of it. And frankly, I think I can go out on a limb and say this. We probably had more professional experience between all of us per capita than any other program out there. I think it's fairly safe to say, knowing the others that I know,
And it's a combination of all that and being able to teach.
Yes.
This is one of the things, because we all have, professional, non-academic lives, and we bring in guest speakers all the time. I laugh when a guest speaker starts saying, I want to be a teacher. And then you start explaining to them what's actually involved in teaching a topic. Like a full-on semester's worth of teaching a whole topic. And they kind of have that deer in the headlights look like, oh, wow. You mean more than just show up and talk about what I did today at work? A lot goes into developing a course. A lot goes into being able to explain to a student the core fundamentals, the concepts, the history, and then the how it's done today. And working professionals in the field today might be really great at saying to you, this is what I did at 9 a.m. this morning, but they don't necessarily know how it was done last year or the last decade, or why it's done this way, or how what they do is related to other parts of the industry. I find that a lot of people in the industry know their one little silo, the one job they've been doing. And let's say they work at a record company, they may have no understanding of music publishing at all, or vice versa. And so they can't speak to the touch points. They can't speak to the connections that happen between different segments of the industry the way our faculty can. And so, you know, some of the other programs out there, you know, you may have a professor, you have an instructor who has never, you know, kind of, they have a job, a day job in the industry, and they've been hired to teach a course. And a lot of what they're teaching you is just how they do that one job today, which has value, but that alone doesn't really prepare you for a career, right? That's the difference between a vocational, like, I'm going to teach you how to build this widget so you can now become a widget person tomorrow, versus everything you need to understand about this so that once you get that first job, you know then how to move up the ladder and move into parallel positions in the industry because you understand the whole ecosystem. So those are some things that distinguish our program and our faculty from some others.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Sarah, I'm going to start with you on this question. What are some of the courses that provide students with insight into industry-specific legal issues and processes, and why is this so important?
Yeah, you know, we touch upon this in a lot of things. I mean, obviously our music copyright class, like it's all about that. But by the way, it's about law and application. So for example, our music copyright class looks totally different than copyright law in a law school. Mm-hmm. Right? Copyright and law in a law school is like, let's read the statute and let's read some cases. Music copyright is, you know, of course it covers what does the law say and what are some cases, but it's much more like, how does this affect daily life in the music business? Like, how is business conducted? What contracts are entered into that address this, and how do they address this? And what does this mean to a songwriter? And what does this mean to a recording artist? And what does it mean to a music publisher? It's very practical business. It's business, like the business of music copyright, as opposed to just the way copyright's taught in a law school, right? So that's one core class everybody has. But then our music licensing class gets into all the legalities and all the licenses that are entered into. Our recorded music operations class touches all kinds of things, like with respect to the kind of legal license that a record company has to have in order to make a recording of a song. That comes up in the recorded music class. You know, it kind of ends up being, you know, our music publishing class obviously does a ton of discussing all the legal matters around, you know, generating revenue from songs. So, you know, obviously the music copyright class is sort of the one that comes to mind, the most obvious, but I would say that the different legal topics find their way into almost all of our classes one way or another. You know, even marketing has to understand trademarks. You know, you can't, like, what kind of trademark are you going to put on that marketing thing that you're going to put out, right? You know, what photo are you going to use in that ad campaign? Do you have the rights to use that photograph? You know, so even marketing plans and activities and materials, you have to think about the legality. So, you know, I think you'd almost be hard pressed to find a course that doesn't have any intersection with legal at all. They all do, one way or another. They really do.
Great, thank you. Ray, what is different about our online Masters in Music Industry program versus the on-campus one? And how do you think it meets the needs of someone who's looking for more flexibility?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously the main difference is the fact that everything is fully online. But, you know, I will say this, in my classes, and I know a lot of the other professors do something similar, I use my online assets, in other words, the videos, the video lectures, whatnot, in my on-campus class. I apply the model where students interact with the online class, the on-campus students I'm talking about, and then when we meet in person, we meet to discuss what's there. So I don't find myself lecturing. I find myself discussing, which is very similar to what I do. In fact, it's identical to what I do with my online students, which is we do the same thing, and then we meet once a week to discuss things face to face on Zoom. In that regard, there's a similarity. The differences are an online class is 15 weeks, an on-campus class is 7.5 weeks. I'm
The
sorry,
opposite.
the other way around. Sorry, my bad. Altitude. On campus, 15, online, 7.5. And it's really designed for folks that, for whatever reason in their lives, professionally or personally, can't or don't want to come to campus and want to have continue with their lives while attending, the University of Miami Frost School of Music. The time to completion is generally faster online. I mean, the program can be done if you really wanted to, and we've had people do it in 1 year. It's a lot of work, a lot of doubling up, but it can happen. But routinely, 1.5 years as opposed to 2 years on campus. So those are really some of the biggest differences. And, the fact that you don't see us walking around and can stop us at the Starbucks. That being said, you're always welcome to pop in on us on campus. We're there. It's all the same people.
Thank you. Sarita, do you have anything to add to that?
No, to me, it's the same course. The difference is just the way you interact with the instructor, right? And the flexibility in the online degree is the, asynchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that took a minute to try and pull that word out. The asynchronicity that creates the flexibility. It does mean that, you may not have a twice a week, hour and 15 minutes, meeting with the professor, but that's, a good thing in the sense that your schedule's not locked in like that you have to find the time between a job and maybe kids and everything else to make time for that. And that's what's attractive about an online degree. But so once you take aside that scheduling difference, the core materials are the same. My classes, the syllabus is the same, the assignments are the same, the exams are the same. It's the same. The interaction with student is a bit different in terms of how often and when, but the assessments are the same. So if I ran into a former student on the street in 6 months after they finished my course, whether it's the on-campus version or the online version, and I threw some questions at them, I would throw the exact same questions at them and expect the same answers. I wouldn't think of them any differently. Like, you've gone through my course, and whether it was online or in person, you learned the same material. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you both. I have one final question. I'll direct this to Ray. What are some of the different paths that you have seen graduates embark on upon completion of the program, whether it's on-campus students, online students? What are some of our graduates?
Sure. Wow. It's very, very diverse. Historically, we've had a lot of people go into areas that involve rights administration, licensing, publishing, performing rights organizations, which, of course, are the most stable parts of this business. They're not affected by COVID. In fact, it was quite the opposite. But we've had people start their own production companies. We've had people, even though our program doesn't focus on that, because of their other skill sets and other things that they had, they were able to do that type of thing. We've had people obviously pursue law careers. Actually, I just recommended a former music business student who has a nice law practice to a current music business student who is trying to start a label and needed an attorney. I said, well, hey, check out this person, I think, we've had a number of people go into the musical products industry. What's interesting is that we don't really have any direct course in music products, but the application of pretty much all of our courses carries over, okay? Because you're still dealing with properties that intellectually are owned by someone. You're still dealing with marketing, you're still dealing with distribution, on and on. So I find often when I encourage students to go to the NAMM show, they'll walk out of there saying, "Oh man, I want to be in this business." It's, by the way, $35 billion a year industry internationally. Last year, its best year in 25 years or so. So yeah, like I said, all these little different corners everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's administrative positions that really are like operational, like making things run, at record companies, at publishing companies, creative positions, marketing positions. Because we've been around so long and because our curriculum is broad, which is one of our strengths, as opposed to 12 flavors of marketing,
Yep.
We've got students in about every segment of the industry that exists. So it's very broad.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you both so much for answering all of these questions today. As you can see, the Frost faculty really care about students, and all of us are there for you every step of the way to help you succeed. And we want to make sure that you do well in this program and that you're part of the Frost family when you're in this program. I also want to mention that in addition to the Master of Arts in Music Industry, we also have 4 graduate level certificates out there. And these are 9-credit certificates. So if it's something you just want to start out and try, you can do the certificate first, and that can transfer into the degree. So we have certificates in music business fundamentals, music rights administration and licensing, legal aspects of the music business, and music entrepreneurship. So there's 4 options out there if you want to try that out.
Yeah. Hey, Rachel, there's a question in the Q&A that I think is interesting that I'd like to just quickly answer. Someone asked about people who want to work in Asia to take this program, and we can apply that to any other. We have a lot of folks historically from Latin America that have taken this degree program. We overall have we keep an eye on international matters. I mean, there's not a class that you can take where it doesn't touch on something international because our business is international. But I teach copyright from a US perspective. I can't teach copyright law in China or Japan or Korea or France or Germany or Spain. However, I know a lot about those systems. And so where there are important touch points, I highlight those, but we, the US, are still the #1 music copyright economy in the world. And whoever wants to work in the music business really better know how things work here. So I think it's a very powerful program for somebody wanting to work in Asia that could, especially in a position of being a liaison in between. I'm not going to mention the country or the name, but we have a former student of ours who is the head of a major label in a major Asian country right now. And he went to work for that company right out of graduation. No, he wasn't the head right out of graduation, but he grew and got promoted through that. So in that division, he's the one in charge.
I'll add to that story, and then actually I have to hop off. In November of 2019, I was speaking at a conference in China, and there I am, and there's 2 alumni from our program at the audience that are like, Professor Elton, so we have our on-campus program actually tends to have, a really good population from Asia, and, learning about the way the music industry functions at its core and then how it functions in the US has served them well, because when they combine that knowledge with an internship in China, in wherever they are, that's when they take what they've learned in the class, which is still the fundamentals, and see exactly how it's applied in their country. That combination, we have found, serves them well. What I will say though, and this is important to understand, because we've had some students come from abroad and, think then that they could work in the United States with the degree. That does happen sometimes, but but just to set expectations, in a good way, right? The United States, the music business is highly competitive. There's a lot of students studying music business. And so for a company that's hiring, they generally in the United States are not going to be willing to select somebody that the company then would have to go through a whole immigration, sponsorship thing just to be completely honest. So the students that are coming to study with us in person or online from other countries around the world, generally speaking, they're going to take that knowledge and apply it to the country where they live, or if they come study with us in person, where they go back to. Some of them do get jobs in the United States, but it's because it is so competitive. If an employer is trying to choose between 2 or 3 potential candidates, and one of them would involve the company having to spend extra money and time to go put that person through immigration approvals, they often won't choose to do that. So it's not a vehicle that says, let me do this degree and then I'll get a job in the United States easily, right? So that's just, I think it's an important thing to be really honest about. But again, so many of our students go back to where they've come from internationally, take that knowledge back there, and are really served well, because in a lot of these other countries, it's not that competitive, meaning there's not many music business programs. And so, people looking for the jobs in those countries in the music industry, it's less competitive in terms of people coming out of colleges with those degrees. So the students coming through our programs really stand out as like, wow, you've studied this. It's not as common in a lot of countries, not even close to as common in a lot of other countries. So that is a real benefit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to hop off. So it's been great meeting many of you. And I know you're in good hands with everybody else who'll be sticking around for more questions, but I'm sorry, I have to run for now. So good to meet you all.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Serona. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to our music industry experts for sharing this firsthand knowledge. And this all ties into the 5 tips for succeeding in the music business, which are acquiring a specialized degree, building a strong professional network, gaining hands-on experience in the industry, attaining industry-specific skills, and understanding legal aspects of the music industry. So now I want to turn it back to Catherine, who's going to close out the session.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for all of that information. I hope everybody had a chance to take some notes during this info session. But again, we will be able to get you out a recording after. So if you didn't take notes fast enough, not to worry. You'll be able to watch that back again, okay? So just a couple of quick items here from an admissions standpoint. Our upcoming deadline here for our next start date, September 6th. Will be on Monday, August 16th. So that is just a couple of weeks away. We want to make sure that you're not delaying the start of your application. If you have any questions in advance, again, please make sure and reach out to us as enrollment advisors. We're able to assist with those questions. But we do want to make sure that you are not delaying the start of your application in any way. We do have our deadline on Monday, August 16th for both the application and as well our financial aid deadline. Perfect. And again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening to our virtual information session regarding the music business degree programs here. We do want to be able to award you with a $300 deposit waiver. When you do connect with us as enrollment advisors here, we are going to be able to set you up with that waiver code, so not to worry. And as well, just again, important date and deadline would be Monday, August 16th to apply as a final deadline there. And I know on our first slide, I just want to circle back here again with our contact information, 800-411-2290, and our live chat option, uonline.miami.edu. And the last link there is most important for everyone who is ready to start your application, or you do want to make sure and just jot this down. So when you are ready, you can certainly just sign up and create your application account. Once you're in your application account, that's where you are able to upload all of the documents that will be required. So your transcripts, your resume, requesting letters of recommendation, personal statement, and all the other instructions will be there. And our enrollment advisors will be here assisting you throughout that process. So again, thank you everyone who submitted their questions through our Q&A feature. And we hope that you enjoyed our virtual information session this evening, and have a good night.